Hello lads and welcome to yet another video. Now at this point we are at the firm halfway point of Series 11 and so far, so decent. I'm enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it. If you're not, that's not my problem. Anyway, you might have recognised by the sort of title of this video, I'm going to be talking about the villains and the enemies that have popped up so far in Series 11 and how they've all got a running theme in the fact that none of them have really had their comeuppance. None of them have died, none of them had sort of been sentenced to any sort of thing. None of them have really had any consequences, or at least most of them haven't had any consequences for the actions that they've done, really. But even if they had, they're still alive and they're still out there and running by the TV film rules. If we don't see them die, then they could not be dead, as a good old way to bring them back. So I've been seeing this theory go around the interwebs saying that at the end of the series, at the finale, an enemy, probably the Stenza, are going to bring back all the enemies in this series to have one big alliance against the Doctor. I'm going to speculate on how sort of plausible that could be and whether it would be a good idea. I'm also going to sort of reference the sort of storytelling narrative devices that letting your villains get away has included. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each villain through chronologically of what they've done through the series and whether they will come back or whether they have reason to come back. And obviously number one starts with our favourite little boy, Tim Shaw of the Stenza from The Woman Who Fell to Earth. I think it's sort of been hammered to us. I've speculated it before, but literally in the Ghost Monument it's been heavily speculated that the Stenza are going to make a return in some way or another. Whether it will be specifically Tim Shaw, who knows, but I feel like it's got no option to be no one else. Because Tim Shaw has a reason to go against the Doctor. He has a motive. She implanted DNA bombs within him and fooled him into triggering them on himself. The last time we saw him, he was falling off a crane, but he teleported back to his own planet with the teleporter thing, which he's jabbed in his chest or something. And with the sort of reference in the Ghost Monument that the Stenza are the destroyers of planets, it's sort of heavily referenced that they're going to come back. And if they are going to come back, then the sort of what we've heard, they're probably going to be the main villain bringing everyone together. If not, if there is someone powerful and they bring the Stenza in, then I just think that's a sort of waste of that reference in the Ghost Monument, because it's making the Stenza up to be a big thing. And, I mean, if it's not them getting them together, then what's the point in that? Another thing I'm concerned of, if they're trying to make the Stenza this big thing with an obvious return, on the horizon, then wouldn't it sort of make sense to have more references? I mean, I understand why they wouldn't have been mentioned in Rosa, because it was set in the past, and I understand, wasn't it, why they weren't referenced in Arachnids in the UK, because it's set in the present and no one really knows about the Stenza. But they were referenced in the Ghost Monument, which is sort of not set in the future, but it's set in space, so people know about them. I was sort of banking on another little reference to them, a cheeky little something in the... Here we go, I'm going to butcher this. Saranga? The space hospital conundrum. Because, it's in the future, they're in space, they'll probably have knowledge of other species, and with that comes the Stenza, I'm guessing. But they weren't referenced at all, so now we've had 3 episodes since their last sort of mention, and we haven't heard anything from them. So if they are coming back, the only thing that I can imagine Chibnall's planning is to do what they did in Series 1 with the Daleks, where you had a singular episode featuring one Dalek and showing how fearsome that could be, and then wait till the finale until you get a load of Stenza/Daleks coming out all over the place in a giant sort of force. However, the reason that worked in Series 1 is because nobody saw the Daleks coming back until Bad Wolf. Until Boomtown, because they showed the spoiler in the Next Time trailer. But it was still a surprise, sure, why not? But now we've had reference to the Stenza coming back, then it sort of weakened it a bit, because now we know they're supposed to be this great force, but we haven't seen anything from them. We've heard what they've done. All we've seen is Tim Shaw kill a drunk human, an old human, a panicky human, and Ryan's nan indirectly. So we're not getting the giant force, but hopefully if they do come back, which, let's be honest, they will, we get to see what they can truly do and see them as an army just decimating planets, as we've heard that they should do. That's the Stenza. Number 2, I cannot remember his name, but old Matey in the Tent. Matey in the Tent got away because he was just a hologram and he teleported what are their names? Epspro, and the other one, I can't remember any of the character names in the Ghost Monument because it's been a few weeks since it's aired. I haven't really done any research. As normal with these videos, they've got no reason to come back. They have no reason to come back because the main sort of antagonist, if you like, apart from the robots and the cloth things, was that bloke in the tent. And if he were to come back, he wouldn't have a reason to come back because he didn't antagonise the Doctor. The Doctor, to him, he was just indifferent to her. He didn't care. The only reason he left her stranded on Desolation is because he didn't care about her enough to bring her along. And she was just left because she didn't matter to him. So if he were to come back and sort of have revenge, he wouldn't need revenge because the Doctor didn't do anything to him apart from convince the two people to win it together, and that's not really reason enough to seek vengeance. If anyone were to come back from the Ghost Monument, it'd be the cloth things. I can't really remember what they were. I think the people of Desolation were forced to make them by the Stenza, so maybe there's a collaboration going on with the Stenza and the cloth things, but apart from that, there's no real antagonist in the Ghost Monument which is worthy of a comeback and doesn't really need one. Moving on, it's Rosa. Now, Crasco in Rosa is the villain who did get his comeuppance, and I thought he was perfect. He was sent using his own device to live in prehistoric times because that is where his ideologies belong, which I think is a great sentiment and it's a great way to send him out. It's not killing the person, which stands by the Doctor and her companions' moral code, but it's just punishing him. It's just punishing him and giving him what he deserves because he is a nasty space racist or a spacist. But yeah, it still gives him the opportunity to come back because I don't think the Stenza should time travel, so I don't know how they'd get him from prehistoric times. But if anyone were to come back, then I think Crasco deserves it the most because he had the most conflict and the most antagonisation against the Doctor. They did fight and he did see her as a main obstacle into getting his goal. So if he were to come back from prehistoric times to take his vengeance, then he would be worthy of that. I don't think he'd work outside an episode outside of Rosa because he fit thematically with what was going on in that episode. So whether he if he did come back, whether it'd suit him, I wouldn't know. But I think there is an opportunity there, and out of all the villains so far this series, he's the one that warrants a return the most. Moving forwards in Arachnids in the UK, this is sort of the weakest villain who got away because he just walked off without anyone trying to stop him. It was, I can't remember his name, I can't remember anyone's name, Trump. Robertson, that was it, the American fella, Robertson, the future president of the USA or whatever. He was very weak. I mean, he had the makings of a human Doctor Who villain. He was arrogant, he was selfish, he didn't care about anything, he was a Trump metaphor. And, sure, I mean, he accidentally mutated a load of spiders and that was a threat, but he was the villain, sure, whatever. But he just sort of walked off, and it was sort of he could come back, but would he really want to get revenge on the Doctor? I don't really think he was, because all the Doctor did to him was preach to him about how what he was doing is bad, and if he's a figure like that who does this sort of thing, I'm guessing he gets a fair bit of that, so I see no reason why he should single the Doctor out and take vengeance on her. The only reason he would sort of team up with a alien force is to increase his chances of becoming president, maybe, or gain power, because that's what he thirsts. But he wouldn't necessarily target exclusively the Doctor. I think his sort of exit in Arachnids in the UK was very weak. I think he deserved something worse. The way I'd write it is that little chamber, the panic room that the Doctor trapped the spiders in, she could have put on a sort of timing mechanism to lock down, but Robertson was just so bloodthirsty. He wanted to use his gun on them spiders, so he got in the room, and then the door shut behind him and he was locked in. He tried shooting the spiders, but there's more spiders and he has bullets, so the spiders take their revenge on him because he's the one that mutated them, or whatever. That's how I would have done it, and that would have been a good comeuppance without the Doctor actually necessarily killing him or doing it or whatever, but it would be his own actions sort of acted against him. But that didn't happen. What actually happened was he just walked off. So I'm thinking maybe that's I'm gonna come back, but I don't think he was a strong enough villain to do it. And now more recently, the most recent episode at time of recording this, here we go again, the Taranga conundrum, the space, hospital in space. The villain in that was the Pating, which I'm growing to sort of appreciate more as time goes on. Didn't like it watching, but whatever. That shouldn't come back. That one pitting, I mean, it can survive in oxygen. That point was made, so it could possibly come back. But the pating are an animalistic sort of primitive species from what we saw. I'm guessing they act mostly in sort of pride or a group or a collective. So for that one pating to be singled out from a load of patings, that would be a sort of an objective in itself. But for that one pating, it didn't want the Doctor. It wanted the ship, because it doesn't eat organic sort of things. It eats metal and stuff like that. So why would it come back unless the Stenza or whoever is the main body uses just general pating as a weapon to eat like armour or something like that, and that's a reason for it to come back. But that feels like it's unnecessary. The pating, they're a species, they exist. Do they have to come back for the finale? No. And the thing is, with everyone just sort of leaving, it's sort of becoming predictable because it's happened so much in the past. I'm going to the bit like, right, is the villain actually going to get their comeuppance, or are they going to like sort of survive and just leave in a possibility to come back? Because if they keep doing that, then it becomes more predictable and there's no real stakes, if that makes any sense. And the endings, as often that I found they've become, especially with arachnids in the UK, become very anticlimactic, because you have this big threat. Okay, the threat stopped, but the person behind the threat doesn't get any sort of consequences and he's just let to go free. And that has happened, quite a few times this series, and it is getting a bit sort of tiresome. I want something new. I want the villain to sort of face justice, because that's what it wants. That's the basic narrative of good versus evil storytelling. The villain has to get his comeuppance, otherwise what's the point? And the villains aren't really getting their comeuppance. The only one I think really has is Krasko. The pating was sort of filled with energy, so it was happy and was just let go. Wasn't given its comeuppance. Sure, maybe it's a primitive thing, so that's excusable, but whatever. Robertson just walked off. He didn't get any consequences whatsoever. Who else is there? The matey in the tent, he just left. Tim Shaw got melted by DNA bombs, but that was it. Everyone's just left. There's been no real punishment so far. So whether that punishment's going to come back in a finale where they'll return, fine, but I don't think most of them warrant a return. I'm enjoying the episodes, but I just think the way the villains need to be written and their sort of arcs and stories over the episodes need improving. Hopefully that happens within the next half of the series. I'm very much looking forward to Demons in the Punjab. What do you think? Who do you want to return? If any of the villains so far in the series were to return this series, who would you want? Comment below so I can read them and go, and not really contribute to conversation because I don't care that much, but it just boosts the algorithm a tiny bit. I've been talking for far too long. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. Have a good time. Yibbidi-doo-da-dee-da-day.